Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Honor to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully self-enlightened One. My utmost respect to the perfectly enlightened Samma Sambuddha, the noble doctrine of the Buddha, and the noble Mahasangha, the disciples of the Buddha. Hello, dear Dhamma friends. Welcome to the week number 24 of our special Dhamma Talk series. Under this weekly Dhamma Talk series, we will cover up some really important topics on Theravada Buddhism to help benefit our community around the world. I certainly believe this effort by Dhamma USA is going to open up more horizon of Dhamma knowledge among our community. We are so delighted to have Dr. Pyi Phyo as our guest speaker today. I am confident she has been amply trained with both Dhamma knowledge and practice. Dear Dhamma friends, please mark your calendar every Sunday at 7:30 a.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and 8 p.m. Sri Lankan Time to get more benefit. Kindly check with Dhamma USA YouTube channel and Facebook page and Facebook groups for more updates. I'm pretty sure you are all going to enjoy this topic, which is lived expressions of Abhidhamma in meditation traditions of Myanmar. Kindly post your questions in the comment sections of Dhamma USA YouTube channel so that we can answer them at the end of the talk. Without further ado, let me invite Dr. Pyi Kyaw to start her Dhamma sharing on lived expressions of Abhidhamma. Please pay your due attention seriously to achieve maximum benefit from today's Dhamma sharing. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
So good afternoon from the UK. That's where I'm currently based. But I'm actually a senior lecturer at Shan State Buddhist University. Please, may I share a little bit about Shan State Buddhist University? This is a newly established Buddhist university in Myanmar, in Shan State. And it was founded by Venerable Dhammasami or Professor Kaman Dhammasami, as he's quite well known among Buddhist communities in Myanmar as well as in other countries. And so far we have about 5 degree programs at our Shan State Buddhist University, including one MA in Pali and Buddhist Studies, as well as postgraduate diploma in Pali and Buddhist Studies. These 2 programs are in English. And then we also have BA program in Shan medium. And this is specifically focusing for Shan very much experts in Shan literature. So we are doing some quite innovative work with our BA program, as well as we offer postgraduate diploma program in library science as well, because library, Shan State Buddhist University Library we are trying to establish a very good Buddhist library in Asia, particularly in Myanmar. So this is just to share a little bit about my background as well as where I'm coming from. So I've been teaching at Shan State Buddhist University since 2018, and I was working at Dean of Academic Affairs there. until quite recently. Now I'm a senior lecturer, so I'm just focusing more on teaching these days. In terms of my own research, so this topic is it came out from my my own research, PhD research, as well as ongoing research, and also my own practice in meditations. So this is so in this talk, what I'm going to be covering is a little bit of background in terms of what is Abhidhamma, and also how this what is well known as scholarly topic or aspects of Theravada Buddhism can be seen within lived practices. So the lived expression is actually coming from the kind of practice part. And so I'm going to be giving you an overview of what is Abhidhamma, and then going to focus more on how Abhidhamma is practiced and received within Burmese Buddhism, in particular meditation tradition, as well as scholarly studies. So so without further ado, I'm just going to go into the topic itself. So in terms of Abhidhamma, when we think about Abhidhamma, the literal translation is normally higher teaching. Abhi means higher, and then Dhamma is teaching. So Abhidhamma, so higher teaching. And people normally think of Abhidhamma as analytical, as philosophy in general. But the way that I would like to think about is it's like a Buddhist analytical philosophy. Why do we have analytical, the word analytical here? Analytical here because we are actually, when we look at the Abhidhamma on the whole, the teaching as well as the text, what we are seeing is analysis of our daily experiences, and also our not just experiences but also physical body and mental experiences that we face. And of course, there are philosophical elements within Abhidhamma, and because one of the very profound texts of Abhidhamma, which is the final text, the Patthana, it talks about causality in very much detail and in-depth way, which we will come to it later in the talk. And then it also deals with metaphysics and also ethics as well. Ethics in the sense that when we look at the beginning of Abhidhamma Pitaka, what we find is kind of kusala dhamma, akusala dhamma, abhyagata dhamma, so wholesome and indeterminate dhammas, which are actually talking about ethical nature of our mind, our mind and various elements around it. So that also brings to psychological elements of it. And then we also find Buddhist cosmology or cosmos, how in Theravada Buddhism think about cosmos and different beings within Buddhist cosmos, as well as how long they live, what kind of consciousness or mind they have, different very detailed analysis of it. So on that basis, we can see that we are pretty much talking about very much analytical elements within that framework. And as you may all know, that in Abhidhamma Pitaka there are 7 volumes or 7 texts, and 7 texts actually focusing on different aspects of the philosophy, as well as all the things that I have just mentioned. And what is it based on? So when we look at the Abhidhamma Pitaka, the very first component or element of that basket, Abhidhamma Pitaka, is that we find Matika. So these are the if you like, the contents of all the different elements, all the dhammas that are that features in the whole Pitaka. And for example, the Patthana, the final text of the Abhidhamma Pitaka, actually base the teaching on the Matika. And when we think about Abhidhamma or Abhidhamma Pitaka on the whole, what we can see is it has so many different methods and ways of analyzing as well as classifying different dharmas in so many different ways. You might analyze the dharma in terms of feelings, for example, 3 different types of feelings. Pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, neutral feeling. This is just an example. Or the dhammas in terms of internal, external, that kind of analysis, and also different ways of classifying these dhammas. But very recently, until very recently, Abhidhamma Pitaka and the teaching within it has featured very little in our academic research and Abhidhamma studies outside of traditional study. I will talk about how Abhidhamma study is very popular within Burmese Buddhism. But what I'm talking about now is how it is very little study has been done from a academic point of view, especially Anglophones academic study and scholarship. So what are the Abhidhamma texts? So in terms of Abhidhamma texts, we have again, like other Vinaya or Sutta parts of the Pitaka, we have canonical texts as well as commentaries and sub-commentaries, and then vernacular texts. So often there's a debate about how early Abhidhamma texts are. Sometimes there's a range of opinions about that. Mostly, scholars agree that it's the canonical Abhidhamma text can be dated to 200 BCE to 200 CE, and then we have commentaries and sub-commentaries from the 5th century onwards, and then we have the vernacular texts and manuscripts and handbooks and things like that. But in Myanmar, when we are thinking about Burmese Buddhism, in Myanmar, what I call popular books. These books are very much targeted for a general audience, and they are very much popular in the sense that you can find these books in most bookshops. So these are like a very popular, very widely consumed, as it were, by Burmese audience. So that's what I mean by popular books. But in terms of canonical texts, we see here there are seven of them. The first 6 texts of the Abhidhamma Pitaka, they are if we look at the whole of the first 6 texts, we can say that it's analyzing the reality in terms of dhammas. So when I say dhammas in Abhidhamma context, is about smallest constituents of the reality. So when we break it down, our body and mind into the smallest constituents, these are called dhammas. Of course, the Katawatu also deals with debates between Theravada school and other early Buddhist school of Buddhism. But even within Katawatu, we can see analysis or analytical elements of it. But then again, the final text, the Patthana, which is the focus of my PhD thesis and my current research as well. The Patthana, this is the text that explore different ways of combining different combining different conditional relations, what we call conditional relations. It means that how we can relate in simple terms, cause and effect. So how can we synthesize all these dhamma together, and so that they are, we explain the interconnections between them. In that way, we are exploring, the causality, or sometimes we use the term conditionality, because there are many different conditions that actually brings these relationships together. So this is just to give you an overview of what Abhidhamma text is. And then when we think about, or when we talk about Abhidhamma, it's quite important to understand two levels of truth. I'm sure you all know that there are two types of truth in Buddhism, and the first one will be conventional. So conventional in the sense that we use concepts, ideas, names, and things like that. So concept and ideas such as I or me or mine, or he, she, they, all kinds of conceptual ideas as well, at a conventional level. And then in terms of ultimate level, this is where we touch on the idea about how we analyze the reality into dharmas. So these the basic factors of all the things that we can be things that can be resolved or analyzed into. Within ultimate level, we have unconditioned and conditioned. Let's just think about conditioned dharmas. These dharmas, they are subject to samsara, meaning that they are subject to impermanence, so rising and falling. They are subject to suffering, dukkha. They are also subject to non-self, so not self. And then we have unconditioned dharma. This is nibbana. So this is nibbana is one way to think about it is beyond the law of samsara. So it's beyond the conditioned things. So it is unconditioned. So having this in mind is very useful in order to understand how when we think about Abhidhamma and Abhidhamma teaching, it is a kind of like a useful background knowledge. Another one is that when we think about analysis, the idea of analysis or analytical thinking, we also find it in early Buddhist texts, in the suttas and everywhere, we find that. And the way that things has been kind of analyzed are in terms of 5 aggregates. I'm sure you all know, are familiar with this. And we analyze them into 12 elements or 18 elements. So these are about how our internal world and external world interact, and how we process our experience in that way. So these teachings, they are we find these in early Buddhist texts, but when we think about Abhidhamma and Abhidhamma analysis, we go much deeper in a way, or more systematic. That might be a different way to think about it. More systematic because we are now thinking about our body and mind and mental and physical experiences in terms of, our body, which is the form, rupa. And then we also are thinking about our mind. We have consciousness, and then we have mental factors, what we call cittasika. So rupa, chitta, and cittasika, they are very much, in a way, capturing our experiences and almost like the reality, as it were. And in terms of analyzing, what I'm actually presenting you here is based on Abhidhamma Sangha text, which is a very popular text in Myanmar and in other Theravada countries. This text was written in, some people date it to 11th century, some scholars date it to 12th century. It was written in Sri Lanka or Ceylon by Shan and it's a very popular text, partly because it's neatly capture what Abhidhamma analysis is about. So according to that text, there are 28 types of rupa or form, and then there are 89 types of consciousness, chitta, and then 52 types of mental factors or chittasika. So just to explain a little bit about chitta and chittasika, we can think about chitta and chittasika in terms of mind. So when we think about in this model, at least when we think about mind, it has the consciousness, so the knowing part, and then it also have other mental factors attached to, if you like, consciousness. So it's not just, when we think about mind, it's not just one thing. It has different elements or different aspects of our consciousness. So this is kind of just to give you an example of what Abhidhamma analysis is like. So within kind of 89 types of consciousness, you might ask, okay, what are they? So they can be kusala dhamma, so kusala chittasika, or sorry, kusala chitta, so wholesome consciousness or unwholesome consciousness, or indeterminate consciousness. Within Abhyagata chitta, we have vipaka, result or resultant chitta, and then kariya, which is functional. Functional kariya, the final one is where, for example, the Buddha or the Arhat, when they function, when they speak or when they do certain things, they do it with kariya chitta. So this is like a functional. It doesn't produce more karma or karmic result. It doesn't produce karmic results. So this is one way of thinking about different dharmas. And the nature of dharmas, they arise when there are right conditions. So like I said, for example, one consciousness or one chitta, in these mental factors coming together, and when there are right mental factors, certain type of chitta or consciousness will arise. And they are mutually dependent on each other. So when you have, say, one consciousness, there will be other chittasikas coming together. And when there are certain chittasika together, there will be consciousness. So they are kind of mutually dependent on each other. They are temporary because they are constantly arising and passing away, and replacing new one is replacing the old one. And then they have the characteristic of non-self, suffering, and impermanence. So three lakkhana or three lakshana. They have these very important characteristics. And then we have nibbana, which is unconditioned dharmas. So this is just kind of give you a kind of a background in terms of what Abhidhamma is about. Of course, Abhidhamma, the text as well as the literature and the whole tradition is very much kind of, if you like, quite wide range and quite widespread. And what I was trying to explain to you was about an overview of what Abhidhamma is from a kind of the content and what it is about. So this is just a very brief overview of what Abhidhamma is, so that you have this framework in mind. Now I want to turn to how this teaching and this kind of system of thought, if you like, is used and is kind of widespread in Burmese Buddhism. And the way to think about Burmese Buddhism is, if we think about unique characteristic of contemporary, at least contemporary Burmese Buddhism, we can come to see that how lived expressions of these teachings are within embedded within Burmese Buddhism. So what are the distinctive features of Burmese Buddhism in contemporary period? The first one is Abhidhamma study. Okay, so Abhidhamma study is very popular. It started, the popularity of Abhidhamma study started, in the, well, if we look at monastic side of it, it's actually started quite earlier. So around about late 17th century, early 18th century, because that's when we started to see more and more Abhidhamma texts being written in Burmese language, the vernacular language, or sometimes we find Pali and Burmese languages together. So it's like a Nisaya, so a particular genre of Buddhist literature. That's when we started to see the popularity of Abhidhamma writings or Abhidhamma texts in vernacular languages in Myanmar. But then again, if we then look at 19th century, early 20th century, that's where we actually find the uptake of Abhidhamma study by lay people. That's when it became, very popular, and it is still ongoing. This culture of Abhidhamma study is still ongoing. Many lay people studies it. They take exams. So this is just an example of how lay people as well as monks and nuns, they take Abhidhamma exams in Yangon and other places in Myanmar. Another distinctive feature is meditation. So when I say meditation, I'm not just talking about Vipassana meditation. It's quite, I think it's quite it's not accurate to say, okay, meditation tradition in Myanmar, they are kind of all of them are Vipassana meditation traditions. Well, of course there are Vipassana, the word we can use, the word Vipassana in to kind of as a descriptive word to describe Burmese meditation traditions, but I would be quite cautious about that. Of course, when we think about meditation, we also can think about other practices such as samatha practices or jhana practices, and even sometimes we can include chanting, for example. Those kind of bhavana cultivating practices, and meditation in general is also another distinctive feature within Burmese Buddhism. Along with traditional non-secular monastic education, this is also a very unique feature of Burmese Buddhism. So if we look at other Theravada countries, such as Sri Lanka or Thailand, over there the monastic education and monastic syllabus, but some of them are kind of very much integrated with secular subject. So, for example, management. Monks and nuns, they might study management or that kind of secular subjects or science, for example. In Myanmar, traditional kind of non-secular monastic education and the syllabuses that based on non-secular is very much an ongoing practice. So this is very kind of very much focused on Abhidhamma as well. So when we look at the whole curriculum across the board, what we see is a lot of Abhidhamma texts are within that curriculum. That's why it has a strong focus on study of Abhidhamma by monastic members. So if we can keep that in mind, we can then understand the whole process, which I'm going to explain here. So when we think about Abhidhamma and Burmese Buddhism, we can see a process has been going on. It's like a loop process. And the process is that, most people in Myanmar, they have this Buddhist beliefs, which are mainly kind of focusing on three different areas. The first one is Abhidhamma. Abhidhamma as the embodiment of Buddha's omniscience. So, and it is regarded as the great defense of the Buddha Sasana. According to various narratives and accounts, there's a saying that people believe that when the Buddha Sasana disappear, the final text of Abhidhamma, which is the Patthana, will be the first one to go. So it's like the Patthana, it's like the great defense, okay? So guarding the Buddha Sasana. And then we have meditation. So meditation as mind culture or mental culture, it has been kind of represented by various scholarly monks and lay expert and educated people in the early 20th century. So this is when when Myanmar was, or Burma was under British colony. And then we have Pariyatti as an embankment holding Patipatti and Patiweda. So Pariyatti is learning, and then holding Patipatti, the practice, and the Patiweda, which is the liberation or the attainment of the goal. So these three beliefs, most Buddhists in Myanmar, they would actually kind of make some kind of reference to these beliefs. And then based on these beliefs and combining with social political factors, we have these kind of outcomes. So what are the socio-political factors? So like I mentioned, Myanmar has a very strong kind of literary tradition of Buddhist studies in a traditional sense. So Pali scholarships and things like that, and also Abhidhamma study, they have been very popular since 16th or 17th century Burma. And then if we look at other kind of socio-political factors, we can see threats. So external threats, such as that we faced in 19th century with the British, or internal threats, which is like controversial teachings by various groups and various Buddhist groups or various Buddhist teachers. So these kind of controversial teachings, they've been regarded by Sangha majority that these are internal threats. And then we have natural threats like cyclone and things like that, where people would recite Abhidhamma, for example, as a protection in order to gain protection, and then supernatural threats as well. So angry spirits or dark magic, and the Buddhist teaching in general, as well as Abhidhamma, they've been used as a protection. And then we combine that with nationalism, so we can kind of this is about national identity and how Buddhists in Myanmar would try to identify themselves as Buddhists. When we combine these factors with but the beliefs, we have this kind of outcome, which is omnipresent Abhidhamma culture. There is mass Abhidhamma studies by both monastics and lay people, and then also transformation of studies on Abhidhamma texts. This is mainly about how even when we study sutta texts, we look or analyze the text sutta through Abhidhamma framework. That's what I mean by transformation of studies. Okay, so Abhidhamma as a theoretical framework and analytical framework where being used to study other Buddhist texts. And then we have Abhidhamma meditation tradition in Myanmar. Most of them, they draw on Abhidhamma. Some, and also indigenous medical texts as well, use Abhidhamma knowledge and Abhidhamma teaching as the faith basis. And then anthropic practices are also based on Abhidhamma. So these are the kind of outcomes. And then we have reinforcing forces. So again, these forces actually kind of strengthen the culture, Abhidhamma culture, and then reinforce it, the whole process again. So that's what I mean by a loop kind of feedback systems being going on when we look at modern or contemporary Burmese Buddhism. So just to explain more in depth about lived expression of Abhidhamma, so I mentioned scholarly studies or scholastic study of Abhidhamma. One thing that I like to mention here is the associated with social status and how the study and the passing of an Abhidhamma exam, for example, you can get certain social status as well as financial awards and things like that. And so in a way, it kind of creates this kind of demand as well as a feedback system that I've been talking about. Meditation. So just let's focus a little bit on meditation, how Abhidhamma is kind of like lived through meditation traditions in Myanmar. If we look at traditional Theravada meditation, which was a system that was popular in Cambodia and Laos and even in Sri Lanka, to some extent Thailand, we see that Abhidhamma teaching or Abhidhamma thought was very much present within that system. Some scholars call it Barong Kamantana method, and there's ongoing research on this traditional Theravada meditation. What I want to focus on is Burmese meditation tradition and how Abhidhamma is expressed through these traditions. So if we think about very famous meditation teachers such as Ledi Sayadaw and Mahasi Sayadaw. Ledi Sayadaw, for example, has he wrote many texts, over 100 texts, and most of his writings actually draws on the understanding of Abhidhamma and the teaching from the Abhidhamma Pitaka and so forth. So that's one thing that I like to say. And also he encouraged lay people to take up Abhidhamma study. He was not unique in encouraging people to take up Abhidhamma study. Early 20th century, there was other lay teachers like Siaji Uong, who was based in near Mandalay as well. he was also teaching to lay people about Abhidhamma. Another meditation, very famous meditation teacher is Mullah Mengon Sayadaw, who was a teacher, one of the teachers of Mahasi Sayadaw, and he also encouraged and drew on Abhidhamma in his writing. And then we also have others meditation teachers who actually kind of draw on quite a lot of Abhidhamma material. In relation to that, the Visuddhimagga by Sri Mahabodhagotha, which is very well known in Theravada world and Theravada traditions, is very much kind of like a manual that is still being used by meditation traditions in Myanmar. So one of the example is Pa'ao tradition, and Pa'ao Sayadaw actually draws on a lot from Visuddhimagga, and he goes in his system, in Pa'ao's meditation system, he goes through step by step the Visuddhimagga, what has been taught in the Visuddhimagga. And so it's Abhidhamma is like a like a prescriptive guide in terms of guiding the meditators through the system and through the practice. But it is also like a descriptive measure, as it were. This is an example where I will draw on my own practice, which is that I've been practicing meditation in the Taunggyi tradition since 2007. And so within that tradition, although there is no textual base or textual theoretical framework that we draw on, but the first thing with Sayadaw was questioned and asked by very learned monks in Myanmar about his attainment through, kind of based on Abhidhamma knowledge and what has been taught in texts like Visuddhimagga. So in this case, in this example, Abhidhamma text and Abhidhamma knowledge was used as a descriptive measure. So in order to verify, as it were, verify the attainments of Taunggyi Sayadaw. And he was not unique. It happened with Sonlon Sayadaw as well, who established Sonlon meditation tradition in Myanmar. Or nowadays, Sonlon and Taunggyi traditions, they have branches in other countries as well. So this is just a kind of give you a more in-depth relationship about meditation and Abhidhamma. So I also mentioned traditional Burmese medical texts, how it's the knowledge from Abhidhamma seep through these medical texts. Another one is grammatical text also. So it's interesting how the Pali grammar and Pali grammatical texts from Bagan period, so around about 13th century and 14th century, that around that time, where they drew on a lot of Abhidhamma knowledge and wrote Pali grammatical texts. Merit making protective practices, again, in Myanmar, when we think about Abhidhamma and Abhidhamma study, people often associate Abhidhamma because it's a higher teaching and the word of the text representing Buddha's omniscience. People say that you get a lot of merit from studying the text and talking about these teachings. So, for example, now I'm sharing my knowledge about the Abhidhamma. So, Myanmar Buddhists would say that, okay, I'm getting a lot of merit from this kind of activities. Another one is protective chants. Again, is drawing on the power of the triple gems, and also another way that they think about why Abhidhamma and the Patthana in particular are very kind of have this potent power or protective power is through pleasing the gods. So the devas, they like hearing these kind of teaching, and therefore the devas, they will bring protection to you. So that kind of logic is behind that. And then very popular practices, which is I will show you as an example. So just focusing a little bit more on example of living traditions of Abhidhamma. I'm not going to go into detail about this. This is the Patthana. This slide explains what the Patthana is. The most important thing here is the Patthana. Like I said, it is talking about conditional relations between different dharmas. So here, 266 dharmas, and their combinations through combinations of 24 conditions. So 24 paccaya. And the Patthana on the whole is about that. Okay, so if you keep that in mind, we can see how this Patthana is used in different practices. Okay, so what are the 24 conditions or 24 paccayas? These are the 24 paccayas. So root condition, object condition. So hetu paccaya, aramana, hetu paccaya, aramana paccaya, adipati paccaya, and so forth. So we come with non-disappearance. So avikara paccaya. Okay, so there are 24 condition. It's quite a coincidence that this talk is 24th in the series. So now we are talking about 24 paccaya. So it's a very nice symbolism there and connection there. So the Patthana. So what it is about, I mentioned that it's actually explaining what the cause and effects and how they are related. So the relating part is conditioning force. So these are the 24 paccayas, and it is talking about conditioning state and their relation to conditioned states. So if you are familiar with the doctrine of dependent origination, in dependent origination, it only talks about cause and effect. Okay, but here in the Patthana, we are talking about how they are related. That's why in the Visuddhimagga, that's where we find the explanation about how the 24, how dependent origination, the 12 factors, they are related. So in the Visuddhimagga, it's explained drawing on or bringing together dependent origination and the Patthana together. So this is just an example of how what the Patthana is about and what it's trying to do. So when we think about Patthana and their lived expressions, okay, so we can see that this is like a very Burmese way of studying the Patthana. There's a very strong tradition of studying, every component of the Patthana. And this one is focusing on question chapter, Bocawada. And the way that they study this is through kind of like a table. But this table actually, and along with the next one, is actually showing you how to calculate the total number of questions in the whole Patthana. Okay, so according to the commentaries, there are over 4 billion questions. But according to Mulatika, so sub-commentary, there are over 300 billions of questions. possible questions. So the point that I want to make here is that we can think about the Patthana as very dry, very repetitive, and very kind of, to some extent, very boring, if you like. But in Myanmar, it has become a lived tradition, and therefore there's a lot of many interests in the text. This is just an example of how people are trying to understand the text, and how they are using the text. Another one that how they are using the text is through popular Buddhism, in a way that this symbol is a very popular symbol in Myanmar, and it's representing 24 conditions, 24 pachaya. It's a logo of Myanmar National Airlines. So MNA's logo is this one. Again, this one also is showing how popular it is. And then you have very much kind of a very famous traditional dancer having his head banner in the same kind of 24 conditions, using the 24 conditions as a logo, as a head band. Now, so here again, this is just to as an example, showing you how 24 conditions are used in a protective daily practices. So this is a way where a practitioner can build chitiya here or pagoda in the form of 24 conditions by reciting and using the rosary, and gradually he or she can build up this chitiya. And you can do it, 3 times, 9 times, and so forth. Okay, 3, 9. These are auspicious. These numbers are regarded as auspicious number in Burmese Buddhism. And then we have a non-stop recitation of the Patthana. So I'm aware that in Sri Lanka and in Sri Lankan Buddhist communities, you have Parit, who which is recited for 7 days, if I'm right, or sometimes perhaps 5 days. I'm not quite sure, but here the idea is the same. It's a non-stop recitation of the Patthana. Sometimes they do it for 3 days or 7 days or 9 days, and this is at one of the nunneries, and they take in turn and they recite the whole Patthana, which has in Burmese edition we have 5 volumes. In the Thai edition we have 6 volumes. So this is just an example. So what I want to bring everything together in a way. Just before I finish talking about the Patthana, another interesting link between the Patthana and meditation is various meditation teachers. They have written texts on the practice of meditation using the Patthana. So explaining our meditation experience through 24 conditions. So there are a few of the texts written in Burmese. So you can see how but the Patthana is kind of lived through meditation tradition or expressed in meditation practices. So what does it mean, all of these elements together? So it's kind of show us a very important role of Abhidhamma and Abhidhamma studies in our practice as well as in our scholarly study of the topic. And it also challenges us to think about our approach or approaches towards the study of Theravada Buddhism. So when we think about Theravada Buddhism, we saw how very much scholastic texts being kind of used and transform the our practice and the lives of Buddhists. So we really need to think about our approaches towards the study of Theravada Buddhism, and not just kind of focusing on philosophical aspect, for example. So this also touches on the categories. What kind of categories can we use? Can we just say that Abhidhamma is a scholastic tradition and therefore has very little role in our daily life? Well, of course, we can't say that. So it's actually challenging us to think about our categories, how we can categorize and think about Abhidhamma and the whole Theravada studies in general. Another thing is it provides reference for our soteriological goal. In modern Burmese tradition, Vipassana tradition or meditation tradition in general. And then it's another very interesting thing is that Abhidhamma actually incorporates developments in the understanding of the world. What I mean is that, so for example, if we look at the Patthana, one thing about the Patthana is that it includes mathematical elements. Okay, so mathematical elements such as combinatorics, and set theories, and this is one of the topic that I'm doing research on. So how the understanding from the ancient system of knowledge is actually kind of combined or integrated within that text. And then, if we then bring it forward and look at modern times, Abhidhamma actually it was used by Burmese experts and very famous monks as a system where it challenges Western scientific knowledge. So, for example, in Myanmar, there are many books which entitle Abhidhamma and Science, or Abhidhamma Abhidhamma from scientific perspective, or things like that. And what struck me is how Burmese Buddhists think about Abhidhamma and the link between science. We call it Tepa. Okay, so how they are linked. So that's the kind of very interesting elements to explore as well. And just to kind of round up a little bit, this is just a selective bibliography. And of course, there are, since these publications, there's been more specifically talking about meditation and Abhidhamma and how they are linked. I co-author with Professor Kate Crosby, who's in Oxford University now. We co-authored this meditation and Abhidhamma, and so they are available online. I think at least one of them are. Okay, so thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. So if you have any questions or anything like that, I think we may have time for a few.
Thank you so very much, Dr. PQ, for this profound speech on lived expressions of Abhidhamma in meditation traditions of Myanmar. I'm sure all our Dhamma friends around the world were benefited today. We will take up your questions now, and we encourage you to post your questions in simple language through the DHAMMA USA YouTube channel.
Why is it Abhidhamma so important to learn? Okay. So I'm going to give you a from a Burmese perspective. So, like I said, Abhidhamma is regarded as one of the higher teachings. So, at least in the minds of Buddhists in Myanmar, they think that Abhidhamma is so profound, and therefore, in order to understand the teaching, you need to study it, and also not from the perspective of learning, but also in order to practice. So it's linked to bhavana and meditation and how one can progress through Buddhist path as well. So, um, so according to many Buddhists in Myanmar, people would say that yes, you need to practice meditation. You need to watch your breath and so forth, calm your mind down. But at some point, you need some kind of theoretical knowledge about Dharma, especially Abhidhamma. So that would be, their way of saying why Abhidhamma is so important to learn. Uh, of course, if we then, this is from a kind of practice point of view as well as religious point of view. But if we then look at socio-political context, and especially late 19th century, early 20th century, when Burma was under the British colony, Abhidhamma was kind of presented as, like a Western, like a scientific knowledge system, where it talks about mind and mental culture. And in that sense, from that kind of socio-political perspective, it became kind of like a, the British, they have the scientific knowledge. For us, for the Burmese or Asian, we have Abhidhamma, which representing the mind culture, mental elements or psychological elements. So we also find that kind of representation of Abhidhamma in Burmese Buddhism. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Dr. PQ. We have another question. So, what is the 5-volume books? Is it by P.A. Oxon?
Seattle. What
What
is
is
this?
the 6th volume? And is this Deepankara's sister?
I think the question is not very clear, but I will try my best to answer. Okay, so the 5 volumes of books. When I was talking about the 5 volumes of books, I was referring to the Patthana, which is the seventh, the final text in the Abhidhamma Pitaka. Okay, so that's the 5 volumes that I'm talking about. The six volumes. So the 6 volumes is in the Thai edition. The Patthana, the final text, the same. It has 6 volumes. So in that edition, there are 6 volumes of the Patthana text. So that's I think that is one topic. The next one is Pao Seattle. Pao Seattle, yes, Pao Seattle. He has his teaching. Some of his teachings draw on Abhidhamma. In particular, the Patthana, for example, in his meditation practices, he has written a book on the Patthana and meditation. So that's one connection that I can tell you. Another one is that in the Pao Seattle's teaching, the Visuddhimagga, the path of purification or the path to purification, that text has become like a manual where you would actually focus, the practitioner would focus more on the steps or the progress that highlighted in the Visuddhimagga. So that's one thing that I can say. Another one is this Dipangara sister. Okay, I think you may be referring to Siali Dipangara, who was who practiced under Paul Seattle. But Siali Dipangara now has her own meditation center in Kien Ung or Myanmar in Myanmar, and she's teaching. As far as I know, she's teaching there. Maybe she's traveling to other countries because she is like other meditation teachers in Myanmar. They travel quite a lot and quite widely, and teaching meditations and various things. Okay.
Okay, thank you for that. We have another question. How can I get that in English?
I'm not sure. How can I get that? That mean what?
So it seems like the 5 volumes and the 6.
Right. That so in the Patthana text, there is a translation of the Burmese version by Venerable Unarada, so a very famous monk. He is very well known for his Abhidhamma teaching, especially the Patthana. He translated the Burmese version, and it was published by Pali Text Society, so it's out, and you can get that. But what I would say, and also along with those 2 volumes of Patthana in English, there are, I think, yes, there are two other guides book. So to go with that translation. So the guides to the Patthana, again, written by Venerable Unarada. And you can study that before you go to the text. There are other very helpful texts that you can also read. One is the Wankaruna Dasan's book on Abhidhamma, and in that book there is a chapter on the Patthana, and then there's another book edited by Bhikkhu Bodhi, which is the translation of Abhidhamma Sangaha, so comprehensive manual of Abhidhamma. That book also has a session on the Patthana. So if you start with that and then go to the translation, that's how you would say. Title of the, I think it's conditional relations. Would be the title. So conditional relations, and you can just Google search conditional relations and Unarada. Okay. Yes.
Okay, so we have another question. Why is Abhidhamma so popular in Myanmar compared to other Buddhists?
Okay, so I just posted this very short version. So conditional relations by Unarada. If you search this, you will be able to find it very easily. The second part of the previous question, which was about the 6 volumes of the Thai version. Actually, I'm currently translating that edition into English. So that's what I've been doing the past a few weeks, and hopefully we can publish that quite soon. Okay, why is Abhidhamma so popular in Myanmar? Right. So I will start with a unique feature that I talked about in the talk, where in Myanmar, the unique feature, or one of the unique features of Burmese Buddhism is this traditional non-secular monastic education. I know it's a very long-winded way of saying it, but there's no other way around it. In that monastic education curriculum or system, what we find is many Abhidhamma texts are within that. Okay, many Abhidhamma texts, along with the Pali grammatical texts. So those are the very two popular genre in that curriculum. And that I would attribute that as one of the contributing factor in popularizing Abhidhamma in Myanmar. Why? Because if you get, what you have is you have many monks, or if not all of the monks, are studying, and monks and nuns, they are studying this curriculum. Of course, they would draw on Abhidhamma a lot. Even when they are doing the preaching and then giving sermons at the mud talks, they would draw a lot on that. And therefore, what you have is this kind of very much kind of subconscious way of making Abhidhamma very popular, and also creating this kind of culture where many lay people will be very used to hearing about Abhidhamma. Okay, so that's one thing. And then you have the belief, which is about Abhidhamma as the representation of the Buddha's omniscience, and then socio-political context. Combine those different elements together, you have very popular study. Okay, compared to other Buddhist countries. In Thailand, for example, Abhidhamma is popular, but and is used, but in a funeral ritual. So there's a tradition of reciting a shorter version of the 7 texts of the Abhidhamma at funerals in Thailand, and also there are also other inscriptions that we found, and also there are Abhidhamma around, but it's we need to do more research on that as well.
Okay, so we have another question. Why is it told that Abhidhamma is important to learn? We create everything means regarding to our mind. But here it's told about heavens and hells. So this is from Sangam Mitra.
So with here is told about heavens and hells.
So they're also talking about 31 Burmese.
31 Burmese. Yeah. So yes, I suppose if I understand the question correctly, again is this question about why in Myanmar at least, or Burma at least, people are encouraged to learn Abhidhamma. So I would repeat the same kind of question answer, in a sense that there are different factors. Yes, of course, Myanmar Buddhists in Myanmar would say that mind is one of the key factors of them. We create things in our mind. That kind of mind is our forerunner. That kind of thing. But I think it's again from another point, another perspective that I could share is how in Myanmar at least, Abhidhamma is regarded as the word of the Buddha. so the Buddha Vajana. And most people would accept that and believe that. Of course, there are exceptions. We can go, we can talk about one of the monks who was Shan who was kind of quite critical of the Abhidhamma teaching. But though those would be quite exceptional. For most Buddhists in Myanmar, Abhidhamma is the word of the Buddha, regarded as the word of the Buddha. And therefore, it's regarded very highly. And therefore, it's, you can kind of see the logic there. Okay. I'm not sure it answered the question.
Thank you for that, Doctor. So we have another question from Nivolia. In Sri Lanka, we have even 365-day chantings of Parita. So happy to hear about Abhidhamma chanting. Thank you for this informative lecture on Abhidhamma. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you. Yes. In Myanmar, just to share a little bit more, in Myanmar, we also have the non-stop recitation of the whole Abhidhamma Pitaka. So there are people who recite the whole Abhidhamma, the 7 texts. Some individuals do it on their own as well. So not just as a group, but also individually as well.
So Dr. P, we have another question. What is Tika Patthana?
What is Tika Patthana? Tika Patthana is the session where you get the first tika or the first classification. So when we look at Abhidhamma Pitaka on the whole, the first session I mentioned that there's Matika, so the contents. In the contents, we have tika session, we have dukkha session. Tika session is where dharmas are grouped in terms of 3. So these are tika Patthana is the triplets, where the 3 triplets are combined in terms of conditional relationships. And then you have dukkha. You have dukkha. Dukkha is in terms of 2, so couplets, so combination. So that's what tika and dukkha Patthana. Yeah.
Okay. So Indica comments, thank you for this very important and very interesting topic of Abhidhamma. How many Abhidhamma Dara monks are there in Myanmar? Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
I think we won't be able to count. Well, so if we look at the, I think you are referring to Tipitaka Dara examinations, and the Abhidhamma Dara monks. I think in terms of numbers, they would be fewer than say Vinaya Daras or Sutta Daras. Sudanta Daras. So why? Because Abhidhamma Pitaka is the last one that they do the exams on. Okay, especially the Patthana, and the Patthana is very difficult to memorize, partly because of various combinations and various numbers coming together. So it's a very difficult text to master. Therefore, Abhidhamma Dara on the whole, it would be much more difficult to achieve than the previous 2 sessions, Vinaya and Sutta. And that's why we have fewer number of Tipitaka Dara Sayadaws or monks in Myanmar. Most of the time they have to take several attempts in order to complete the Patthana. Okay.
Okay, Sangamitra says, everyday chanting of Chitta 21, Chitta Sika 52, and Rupa 28, what do we gain by these chantings?
Well, what can we gain by this chanting? I think concentration, perhaps, by chanting those kind of Abhidhamma lists. Essentially, these are the lists. Okay, so by chanting those lists, I think we can improve our concentration, and also perhaps our memory, and a lot of kusala as well. So a lot of wholesome merits
Right.
from this practice. The in terms of chanting and recitation, the reason I say this is improving our concentration and memory and so forth is mainly because I do it, and also I did it for during my PhD study. I took exams on the Patthana, and especially oral examination, and and for that I had to memorize many pages of the Patthana, and that's where I did notice about concentration as well as memory improvement.
Okay, great. It looks like those are all the questions and comments for now. So, Dr. P, I actually did have a question for you as well. So, I
Right.
wanted to know, is the Abhidhamma taught in grade schools in Myanmar?
In Myanmar, no, no will be the answer. Not in secular kind of education system. They are not taught there. But what happens is that most parents and also young people, they would go to what we call Abhidhamma Association,
Okay.
established by lay people, and then there they can study, or they study Abhidhamma, along with other texts and things like that. So yes, we do have it, but not in the state education system.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, we conclude today's Dhamma sharing, and we look forward to meeting with you for more insightful Dhamma sharings in the coming up weeks. So let's keep our palms together close to our hearts and pay respects to Dr. PQ with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you always be well, happy, and healthy, dear Venerable. Let's also keep our palms together close to our heart and pray by the power of all the dana, sila, and bhavana activities that we have all performed during our lifetime and during our whole course of samsara become one united power, and may it be shared with all the celestial beings. May all the wonderful celestial beings, including respectful Brahmas and Devas and all sentient beings, receive this merit and share this merit and be well, happy, and healthy wherever they are. May all your departed ones, including the late Acharya Upajaya's parents and all other ancestors, all the departed ones also receive this merit. Be well, happy, and healthy wherever they are. May all of us be able to live life peacefully, comfortably, and with good health. May all of us and all sentient beings be able to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana, the absolute peace and happiness at the end of our samsara. Thinking thus, please keep your palms together close to your heart and say sadhu 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu,
Sadhu,
sadhu.
sadhu.
Sapityo vivajantu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. See you again next week at the same time. Have a good night and Theron Saranai.